Good morning, it's Richard here. I'm still waking up. I'm sharing another conversation today that I had last night. It's a little different from the other conversations on this channel. It's not about community building, but I wanted to share it because I think it's relevant. So I was talking with Diego and Alban from RatPark, and I think RatPark is a very interesting project in Costa Rica. It's like an intentional community for activists that have a focus on technology and interpersonal development. And yeah, I like a lot of their keywords, and it looks like an awesome space. Um, and they got in touch with me recently after a couple of years of break to tell me about this new project they're doing called the Alternative Novel Network Enterprise Project. And that's what we had a conversation about, was that looking at this. Basically, it's a new kind of way of thinking about cooperatives and how cooperatives can be linked up to a really, really large scale to like be competing with Amazon and those kind of like massively integrated systems. So check it out. I think they're quite interesting. It's kind of early days, but I'll include the link so you can go and follow along. There's some good research proposals and documentation, and it's all open for you to participate. So if this sparks any of your own keywords or any of your own interest, you're most welcome to join in and add your thoughts to the puzzle. All right, enjoy this conversation with Diego and Alban.
Uh,
How have I been? Yeah, apart from the last couple of weeks, I've been like laid horizontally with the flu. Have been in this mode of like really, we're living at the moment in Italy. We got here right before the start of the pandemic, and kind of because of that, I think we just kind of failed to build any local community here. Me and my wife Nati. So I've been in this like really tiny little bubble feeling. But at the end of this week, we go and pick up our motorhome, and we're leaving Italy, and we're going to be nomads for like maybe a year or something. So that's really exciting. I'm really like feeling the pace of my life accelerate again. And like basically the plan is going to be driving around projects like RatPark and that sort of thing all across Europe, and just see what people are up to. How can we help? What can we learn? Maybe write a book. I don't know. But yeah, I'm really excited about this like phase change that's kicking in on Friday afternoon.
Amazing, man. I'm happy for you. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah. And I never met your partner, Natia. I know you talk about her a lot, and she's involved in the similar dynamics. So I'm hoping to meet her sometimes.
Well, we want to go to Costa Rica one of these days. So, I mean, since we first met, I've had the intention to come and visit one day. It was a very warm invitation. So I will take you up on it one day.
Yeah. I'm looking that you're doing these micro solidarity events, and that would be pretty interesting. Let's keep that in mind, Will it be super cool to have one here?
Yeah. How many people can you host there?
We can host, I mean, depends, but we can host 30 comfortably, maybe 40, 50. That depends on when. We're growing. We're trying to build a little bit more space. So yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about? I know you've got this project you've been developing. Do you want to just focus on that, or do you want to give me I'm really curious to know the bigger picture, what's happening at RatPark and what's happened in the last couple of years and where you are, but it's kind of up to you what you want to focus the conversation on.
Thanks. We were actually contemplating what Rich wants to talk about. What we want to talk about, I guess a little bit RatPark as well, but RatPark is a mechanism for what we're trying to do. So it's sort of in service of at least a part of RatPark. It's sort of an office space for doing what we're doing, which is this alternative enterprise, which is what I think we would start talking about, because it's the most interesting thing we're doing. The community thing, it's a developing project. We're trying to learn more than what we have to say. We've just built the space and it's not activated yet.
Okay. I scanned through, I read the summary and then I like scanned through the more detailed research document. And if we hadn't met, I gotta be honest, if we hadn't met before and I just read that document, I would have been like, okay, You know, good, nice. You want an alternative economic system, but it's kind of the documentation is at this level of abstraction where I'm like, you know, you can't tell from reading that whether you know what you're talking about. But because we've met before, I have the impression that you are active and doing stuff. So it makes me interested in a way that the document on its own is not so interesting. So I'd love to get more detail, like more concrete, more practical, where like where do you think you are in the process of developing this new model? Like kind of yeah, what's the maturity phases that you imagine? Like where are you in those phases, and what is how do you yeah, what does the kind of R&D process look like where you go from this very nice and tidy diagram to like practical experimentation and iteration? Like, can you fill me in on some of that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. Diego, you want to go first and then maybe I can fill in as well?
Well,
Or
I can
should I?
start a little bit. I'm going to do my best because I don't know, I think we have like some sort of problem with the internet and it's not my home, but something like this. Yes, indeed. I mean, we met with Alban time ago. And I think like the main thing that we are trying to improve or to contribute to is like to create like a new generation of alternative enterprises that it's not something new, but we are trying to build in the tradition like cooperatives, for example, that we think if we need if we can and of course we need to build a new economic system, a big part of this is going to be things that are already working, like COPs, for example, that we see that can be much better than they are now. And in that sense, we are trying to put forward like theoretical, engineering, organizational engineering designs, and also put practical examples of proper new generation type of cooperatives. So my summary would be something like this.
And what is it about co-ops that needs improving?
A couple of things. I don't know, Alban, maybe you can develop on that, like this point.
You can continue it. I would, because I would like to give my a bit of a different perspective on what we're trying to do as well. So maybe you can interrogate that.
Nice. We were discussing a lot, and we realized that COPs are a very good model, especially consumer COPs. They work very well. We have very good examples, like, for example, Migros in Switzerland, that is one of the biggest enterprises there. In Uruguay, in the country, we have like very interesting experiments of cooperatives starting like the production of milk products, and they're huge and food combinations that are partially cooperatives, partially state-owned enterprises. That in general, these cooperatives they lack some fundamental things that other maybe private. Well, like for example, cooperatives in general, they work in an age, and we see that they not compete with these huge private conglomerates like these called huge corporations that merged. Okay. Many crops that are like
It's we're losing you, Diego.
Yeah, Diego.
You're turning into a robot.
yeah,
I was hoping it's just in my end.
No.
Yeah, the thing is the connection. It's not very good. I mean, but if you want to develop that point, and I will try to reboot the router and come back again, okay?
Right. I think you were doing a good perspective, because Diego and I have a different expressive style. So I like Diego's style very much. It's very comprehensive for me. It's a bit more academic than my approach. So I'll just go from the beginning, I guess, what we're trying to do. because maybe there's this idea that we're trying to build an alternative economic system, and that's not what we're trying to do at all. Like that seems a bit too. Yeah, I don't even know how can one build an alternative economic system. It sounds wrong to me in so many different ways. We're just trying to do we're trying to be a component of this new change that it needs to emerge. And that maybe will develop into an alternative economic system. We don't know. There's so many different organizations in the world that are working on this topic, they're aiming to kind of improve our socioeconomic system generally. I think we all agree that it has some major issues and there needs to be some improvement. And with many issues that we're facing today, it's like a pretty big fracture on our socioeconomic system that it's a good time to kind of try different models and do different things. Our contribution to that process is we're trying to build a business, technically, just like a simple business that it's modeled based on this consumer cooperative model, which is sort of democratic and public, but non-state owned. So we want public owned enterprises that are owned by the people that they're serving, but non-state. At least I like state-owned enterprises technically, but that's not what we're doing, because that's the state sector that is doing, and we're just trying to do that in a different model. And I think consumer co-ops are that, to some extent. So with the way we're starting, why the text is a bit intense and complicated and not so catchy, is because we're trying to develop theoretical frameworks before we jump into business endeavor. Because, as you know, many different businesses, many different enterprises, many different organizations start very quickly, but they don't manage to be successful. And then if they become successful, they lose their objectives. It's like pretty much all these WhatsApps and Skypes and all these big businesses, they're sort of upset with what they've developed. Same with people that work on Facebook and Google, and yeah, they all build good stuff, but by the time it grew, they left that, and they're trying to kind of like Tristan Harris and all these I think one of the reasons is because they haven't done the real work before they start these things. So theoretical foundation, theoretical framework for how do we actually build a business. So that's our first part of our work, is this. It's just the beginning of it. It's not a fully developed thing where we started putting what we think from a lot of years of research. And now we're trying to call to action and do some more democratic development of this thing. We don't want to start this thing without more people putting input in it. I think it's very important for many reasons, and I'm sure you know. So yeah, that's pretty much what that N is, like alternative, novel, network, enterprise, theoretical foundations. And it touches on governance, it touches on applied identities, which is what type of businesses we should do, because there's so many businesses that need to be done, so many enterprises that needs to be done. Where do we start? It's not just the governance model, it's how do you organize it. But what type do you start? It's a very complex decision to be made. And then we lay some principles and values, which is pretty much, I think, we're going to your question of what's the problem with consumer co-ops. And I can continue that, or maybe Diego, you have good internet to continue with how you.
I think yes, now it's quite better.
Was that good? Did I sort of jump in time and kind of weave this thing?
Yeah, I really like it. Yeah.
Right.
So yes, I mean, besides what Alban was telling, I think we're trying to improve in some things that traditional consumer co-ops. We see that these not only values are not strong in these senses, but also they are not applying some tools that are available today. for example, we're trying to put this idea of a new cooperative in a local approach. Traditional co-ops in general are like nation-based, so they work well, but in the boundaries of a nation, and we see that that's a huge problem because I mean these big private crazy corporations, they are like international and they do like very complex and bad things in a global way. So if we want to put a real alternative to them, we need to go local. That is like local plus a global. So it's a local in within the global, and I think that is a concept that is quite new, and we are trying to use it a lot. Also, I think from the beginning with Alban and the other people around the team, we were thinking, okay, we need to use like new tools of participation that luckily today with the advancement of participatory technology, informational technology, artificial intelligence, we have like a whole new range of participatory tools that traditional co-ops are not working with. And we think, okay, we need to use that also. These tools shouldn't be only in the state. That for sure is something that is completely lacking today. And it's something to improve, but also like in the traditional cooperatives that are quite huge, they are still based in this type of not all idea, but yeah, custom centuries, that this assembly type of participation and this paper type of voting, that we think that okay, we need to improve that. So in that sense, we are trying to grasp new concepts and tools that are around the world and in different areas, and trying to merge them and improve it within this new type of value system that we are planning on. Yeah, and now we are trying to design this new system with these new arrangements, and yeah, seeing how it's going to be deployed in like real examples. And also we are thinking, okay, not only we need to do these COPs in particular places, but also we need to help to other COPs to improve, you know, because we see that there is still too much to do in this cooperative type of work, and it is a huge opportunity for change, because this new revolution and new economics that are planning some sort of magical revolution, we don't see that that's going to happen soon. And yeah, the most like actionable and viable approach that we see to a more like equal and participatory economics is we need to improve on cooperatives, and we need to expand on cooperatives. We know that these organizations work well, but yeah, we need to improve them for sure.
So what part of this plan do you feel like you need the most input on, or like that you feel least confident about, or like where's the useful part for me to put my attention on?
Maybe Alban, you want to develop this?
I would like to, but can I just jump on the previous question a little bit as well? I think it's so I would like to just talk about Migros a bit and see why are we different, what we want to build something different from Migros particularly. And Migros is an interesting consumer co-op that I have not known for a long time, even though I've been in this co-op world for a long time. But for some reason, it's not very famous. And I think as far now that I kind of know, I think it's one of the best co-ops that we have in the world. It's a consumer co-op, it's not a worker-owned co-op. It's owned by 5 million Swiss people. I think it has 5 million members. It has supermarkets, so it's the biggest supermarket chain in Switzerland. It's cross-sector industries. It serves cross-sector industries, so it has a bank, it has sports centers, it has telecom, it has all kinds of different services that I don't even remember all of them. It produces 90% of the products that it sells within its own stores. So pretty much all that supply chain of all the goods in the stores are actually produced by some sort of consumer co-ops themselves. So for me, it's like a non-capitalist organization that's like the most developed.
Mm.
So it's a very interesting consumer co-op, and it has this Swiss style federation. So it's governed through a federation system, which is different but interesting. What the problems with it? It only works for Swiss people. It's been around for 50, so 60 years, or God knows how long, and it just never really developed anywhere else. So it's great, but it's only great for the Swiss people. And I think if we take that model and we just expand it everywhere in the world, Uruguay, US, Germany, all these, Ghana, all these different places, Costa Rica, I think the world would be a much different place. So we've had an example that works relatively good, but it never went global. One of the big problems, I think, it's this idea, this local approach. So whenever a good idea emerges, it never scales because it just doesn't, it's not global in approach. While it's competing with Amazons and Revoluts and all these big enterprises that are very global in scale. While they're actually working in sort of in a negative effect to the place where they're working. Like if Amazon is coming to work in Germany, it's taking equity from Germany. It's providing service, a good service, obviously, but it's taking equity versus the approach that we're trying to do. We're trying to scale this thing, but actually, even though it's global in scale and it's coherent with the whole global organization in a way, it's actually sort of in a federation style, serving particular nation that it's actually developed. So this is what I think Diego is talking about: global and local in scale. Also, it's not high tech. It's not very high tech. It's really the progress to develop the technology is very slow. They're adapted to this place. I don't know, for many reasons. I would like to do research on Migros a bit more to see why they don't employ the tech capacities that Amazon and Revolut and all these places do. I have my own ideas why, but that's probably not very well developed. So that's just a couple of these problems that I think. So what you can help now, what you can do on this thing, as we talked last time, I think I don't really. We can develop these talks. We can talk because we cannot establish that in a 30-minute conversation, but. And there's many ways that you can help, many ways that you can take this place. But I think we should just continue talking a little bit too. And I think that's the best thing. It's just to know a little bit what we're trying to do. And I think once we have this conversation, in my experience, has been that if one kind of has a conversation with me to kind of explain in a layman's term that we're just trying to build an Amazon. We're trying to build an Amazon that works good for whatever it's actually operating. Competing with Amazon that's developing all over the world rapidly. Competing with Mercado Libre that's developing rapidly in Latin America. Private companies, extractive models, if you want to call it that way or not, because it's not, I'm not trying to be a populist here, but yeah, sort of that the whole theoretical framework starts making sense a little bit more than just reading it directly without the context.
Yeah. Oh, then I mean, first of all, I always just dream that someone's going to take over Amazon, because I'm like, Amazon is good. It's just like really fucked up labor practices, and it should be returning the profit to the place where it came from. And then it would be awesome. It'd be amazing. It's kind of the only company we need, and it's so efficient and like mind blowing. Can someone please just like take over somehow, or like give Bezos the right psychedelics or something that he has this like.
I think there's two options. We either nationalize it, or we make a new one. Because even if Bezos decides to operate it nicely, it should not be in control of one person. It should be democratically controlled. It should be, And it's same with Revolut. It's a bank that's been developing so quick. Like in the next 10 years, it's going to be one of the biggest banks. And while I feel like we're the activists and people that are trying to see the different world, we're just waiting while literally two guys, develop this whole bank all over the world.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, come on, we can do better. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
And the challenge always comes up for me though, is like, how do you outcompete these like like Amazon, Revolut, both good examples of like, they're not just competitive, they're like hyper competitive. They're like doing that blitz scaling thing, which it seems to be counter to the kind of activist values. So like, how do you, it's one thing to design the perfect model, and perfect in the sense that like, oh, this delivers on all the bottom lines that we care about. But like, how do you think about the competitive landscape and how to get something in that actually is more attractive on every front, that you don't, I'm assuming this is not like with Migros, people go to Migros because it's convenient and the price is good and the quality is good, not because, this is just my guess, I don't think they go to Migros in the way that they go to church, you know, they're not going because they have some deep set of values that says this is the right place to go. It's just like you go to the supermarket. So like, yeah, how do you think about making this competitive? And not just competitive, but like obviously more competitive than all the other startups out there that are trying to do things and don't have so many values to take care of.
Yeah, totally. I think this whole new, not new, but in general cooperatives, I think that politically, I mean, this project is like a political project, you know, I mean, we're not doing this for like just doing something. It has a meaning behind, and cooperatives in general, if you see the history, they arise with some basis related to political values. I mean, and this is what we are trying to still promote. I mean, we understand there is a huge, and in the future it's going to be worse, like a huge worry about these corporations, you know, like Amazon, these big private corporations. I mean, we are starting to realize that these are becoming like some sort of feudal systems. So we think like now and beyond in the near future, I mean, we will be much more conscious about this private enterprises. So we see that there is a big political leverage there to work on, you know, because for sure, more and more people are starting to realize that this is not good. And a clear alternative is this. So we hope that people are going to like politically like support these enterprises, you know, and there is a big hope for that. In the more like the church way that you were mentioning, something like this. Of course, there is a need to be like efficient in that sense of production. Also, like trying to care in the environment at the same time, and we see that it's something that people are still getting much support to it. So we see that from now and in the middle term, there is a lot of leverage points that we can like work on, and not only we, but all people that are starting COPs, you know, and are models that they work very good. I mean, maybe they don't compete with Amazon in the US, but Migros is a good example of something that can work very in competition with private enterprises there. In Latin America, we have very good examples of how COPs work. So in that sense, we have like a bit of hope of what actual COPs already does. And also in other terms, we are seeing that, okay, there is a growing interest in new alternative enterprises that people will support. And this in combination with like efficient production, we see that there is like a huge opportunity to effectively outcompete, or at least compete with this type of feudal corporations that are arising. So at least I see these three different leverage points that we can work on. Maybe Alban has, I'm sure that he has other ideas, because we discussed at this point a lot of, okay, why these new enterprises are good and why we can compete with these private enterprises.
Can I go? Yeah.
Yeah, go.
So I think we have a major advantage on this. I think So I'm creating some tension by saying we will outcompete them so quickly, so fast that it's going to seem very, very reasonable after some point. And for a few reasons. One, we actually do have the church aspect that we can develop because we're ideologically based, sort of, It's beyond ideologies, but it has about ideology based as well. So just because it's people owned, it's owned by the people. However, that's not that's just a component of it, because in the end, most people buy it because it's cheaper, and that's where we need to outcompete with Amazon. There's so many worker cooperatives, like a drivers co-op in New York, that's a ride sharing thing. Yeah, it grew very quickly because there was a lot of ideological support to it, but I do not see it scale because it's only developed that aspect of a scaling approach. I think I want to go to particularly why we're thinking to do an Amazon. Why is it an Amazon? And this kind of starts explaining how can it actually scale. And I think one of the core components is having a market, having somewhere where people actually go and buy a product. If you don't have a market, you can start producing anything, but then you're always competing for the market share or for where to. So if you produce something today, you don't know where to sell it. You have to sell it in Amazon. And the moment Amazon starts seeing that it's selling, that it can start, white label, private label, all kinds of different methods too. So you need to have a market. If you don't have a market where people interact with the production, it's very hard to scale. So that's where we start in the market. Another big component of this thing, it's actually a bank. The leverage that these private companies have, they can raise capital by selling equity. So we don't have that. We cannot raise capital by selling equity. But the monetary system, as bad as it is, as bad as it is in many different ways, it's very good in many ways. And in our case, it works perfectly to create capital to start integrating the supply chain of this market. So initially, you just start selling things that people are producing anywhere. But if you have a bank, then the deposits that are in the bank, you don't even need the deposits in the bank, but that's a very complex monetary topic. You have the capacity to actually extend credit to start producing. And that's people's money being used for producing public-owned things. So instead of raising capital by selling equity, you can just issue loans, but from a bank with a low interest, and it's a safer loan because you're actually producing something directly. So it actually, you see how I'm kind of going all over the place, but I see you.
Yeah.
Versus Amazon doesn't have that. Also, Amazon, for example, Amazon comes and works in Italy, and it's having major issues with because it's exploiting labor. Obviously, that's what it has to do. That's what it does. So there's all this resistance that happens from the Italian labor force, all kinds of problems, strikes, and different kind of styles of striking. But what Amazon does with this tech capacity that it has, logistics tech capacity, it just bypasses those warehouses that are striking, and labor needs to organize in an international level to actually outdo. So we're actually, the way this alternative enterprise would work, it operates same as Amazon, but it would actually not be extractive to the location that it's expanding in. So this is another way that it could outcompete. So it's sort of out Uber. So you start with a market, you continue with a bank, you continue with the ride sharing application, because we don't have a good ride sharing application that's cooperative based. There's so many people working all over the place, but none of them is not even close to Uber. And you do an Airbnb and you do these things, and this is when you get this sort of, what is it called? Sorry, I can't think of the name, but I'm referring to out Uber, because you have all these different services that you're integrating with one another,
Hmm.
and they don't have that. They have their own particular niches.
And is when you make the reference to Migros, does that mean you are like exclusively focused on consumer co-op, or would you also consider like a multi-stakeholder co-op where like you can enroll the workers and as owners, or is it like, because I can imagine if it is the scale of Amazon, then everyone's a consumer, so that's sufficient. But if it's at a smaller scale, I'm wondering about what, how are the workers enrolled?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, now, for example, we are trying to, we have a first version of governance, and now we are doing a second one, like an improvement on this. And the idea is to combine different aspects of different COPs, because there are worker COPs, consumer COPs, and other different COPs. That the ideal thing is, okay, we need to test different models in different locations and see how it fits, because also this is dependent on the scale, as you said, on the location. But yeah, we are open to apply different models of different cooperatives.
Hmm.
In that sense. So yes, indeed. Another thing that we are trying to, not hoping, but waiting for, is like other big leverage point that we have, is we need states behind cooperatives. It's something that in some places is happening, but in other some places like the US, no. I mean, these whole big enterprises like Amazon, Mercado Libre, these big banks, they are not just private enterprises. They are like backed by the state, and that's a huge problem, because the state shouldn't do that with this type of corporations. So we are hoping that there is a big shift in public policy, especially, and this will arise about the new conscience about these things. And we are hoping that this type of new public policy will help a lot of cooperatives, not only what we're doing here, but in general, And we see that this could be a huge leverage point also. I mean, because one of the main, basis to all compete is thing is, okay, we need to have the state behind one way or another. Otherwise, it's impossible. And here in Latin America, we have very good examples of this working very well. Like we have this big funding for cooperatives that are amazing. And we need to replicate that in the US, for example. Why not? Something that can happen.
Can I add? Can I add to that? Because that's why we went to Kosovo, by the way, Rich. So the progressive political party that we're sort of involved with, radical grassroots, it grew. So anything that's grassroots, when it grows to 50% in a parliamentary system, it's not grassroots anymore, but it was grassroots. If you, in political aspect, if you grow to 50%, you cannot remain as radical, because if you remain radical, you end up with 3%, and that's it. But nevertheless, they're still radical. So what I'm trying to make a point is they want to grow the public-owned economy. Like, this is their true goal. There's no doubt. I know this personally. And many governments around the world they want to do that. However, there's no political capital for them to do state-owned public enterprises. It's just not like this.
The right wing.
If anyone that knows politics, it's they don't even have the capacities. Forget about the political capital.
And bad associations from the past, right?
Many different problems. But what my point is that, so now this new government in Kosovo, which is kind of ironic, it went to US. The prime minister himself went to US to these tech companies, trying to bring these tech companies in Kosovo, because even though they do not build public companies, it's good for Kosovo if they can actually bring private company in Kosovo developing things. That's just the way economy works. It's not great, but it's good. It's better than not doing that. And they do not have any public consumer co-op option to actually invite to their country. This is where we need to step in. Like the country, in Kosovo in particular, the government, it's actually given land, it's given prime real estate actually to supermarkets like Aldi, just to come in there and actually do some business development, hire people, because in a way, it's good, you know.
Yeah.
We need to have a different option for
Yeah.
these progressive governments that are real, like not two guys in a garage talking, you know, with the theoretical frameworks, you know. We need to have a model. Yeah, we need to have something in tangible.
No,
And this is what,
that's always where my question goes. And I like my natural position has always been you know, like shut up and prove it. Like, but I do understand the reasoning behind putting all this emphasis on the theory. Like it makes sense. It's not my normal posture, you know, but I understand why you're doing it, and it makes sense to think in this way. I think it's strategic, and the strategy needs to have some tactics. So, like, where are you? Where does it become tangible? Where does it become concrete? Like, what are the specific places geographically? What are the specific products you're focusing on? Like, how close are you to maturing that plan?
can I go into this, Diego, or you want to? So yeah, I think this is the perfect next question to express what we're trying to do, right? So first, we're like social scientists. I'm a political scientist, he's a political scientist, Ken is a software developer, so we come between and business experience as well. So we come from business, but also technology and social sciences. So this is, I think, a good combination to develop something that would scale. Another thing that I want to mention that's sort of just laying a foundation for this, we want to be actionable. Like, it has to be actionable. You know, we're just not doing theory. The point for theory is not, you know, this is beyond theory. The theory is just a good foundation to actually build something actionable. So other than the ANI, this frame foundation, theoretical foundations, we started the next level of this project. That's the contextual research analysis, to actually take this sort of model and see where we could apply, in what kind of business we can start. Something small, because we're not going to start with an Amazon. That's like, you know, obviously it doesn't make sense. It's too big. We shouldn't even rush to that level. So we have few ideas, and one of them, it's actually US, California, San Francisco. It's a very interesting place. It has a lot of this meta-modern culture that's beyond nation state, good communicators, very tech capable, so many capacities that could be utilized within that geographical area. Another one is actually they lack this cooperative model. Europe has a lot. Like, Switzerland doesn't just have Migros, it has Co-op, which is the second biggest. And it's all over the European countries. You have these consumer co-ops that are supermarkets. So in US doesn't. It has some mom and pop stores that are worker-owned co-ops. Nice, but that's not changing much. So one of the places that we're trying to do this research analysis to see how this applies is actually US. Could also be Latin America. So we're
I mean,
between.
Please finish, and I will. If you want later, I will comment on Latin America. That is interesting, but please finish.
Right. So this is one thing. There's this research analysis that in this approach, we're trying to bring people, but also organizations to co-develop this to co-analyze together and see what it looks like. And there's because of our tech capacities, like tech capabilities, we want to start with some service. And one of the good ones to start with, it could be some ride-sharing app. Actually, a ride-sharing app that looks just as good as Uber, if better. And I can go a lot on this ride-sharing app, but this could be done in San Francisco, for example. This could be a good start to begin, and then it could just grow based on many different things. But I think it's a good example to start with a ride-sharing app that you can bootstrap it in different parts of the world, in different kind of dynamics. You can do it yourself. You can rent it to some consumer co-op that wants to use it, or some worker co-op, driver worker co-op. Just like I mentioned, the driver co-op in New York. their software is not good. It's great. I love the organization. It has some major things, but the software is just not good. I don't see it scaling. And you can't outdo Uber with ride sharing apps that are local. It just doesn't work. We have so many examples of how Uber just outcompeted many organizations. So that's one good example of how we can actually do it. Very actionable. Doesn't even require that much finance. Technically possible. It doesn't require some major cultural change of capacities or anything.
So yes, in that sense, we are still in this first phase of like governance design, especially, and then later on, we are planning to like do contextual researches to see what is better to do in different regions. And in that sense, for the two reasons, we are developing some partnerships with other people around that are working in different areas, and we are hoping to do this good organizational design, and then later on, this contextual research. Another other context that we thought that maybe it's a good place to start something is here in Latin America, because we are seeing that there are big shifts, especially in public policy and governance and governments. So we see that maybe there is more possibilities that some governments will be behind this type of new cooperatives than, for example, the US, that is much more like hyper-capitalist still state. So in that sense, we are thinking that maybe later on, we need to think in Latin America because it could be a very good example to start something. Also, very interesting things are arising in Asian countries, like in China, for example. I mean, of course, it's a country that has a lot of problems and crazy stuff. But I think one of the good things that they did is there are huge cooperatives there, like Hawaii, for example, that is global, So we think that there is a lot to learn there in that sense. And in other Asian countries, there are very huge cooperatives also there. Very interesting examples. So yeah, this contextual research team that we are trying to do in this second phase that we are still to do on is to analyze this specific context, where to apply it and how to apply this type of cooperatives.
Have you guys talked to the people at Fairbnb? Do you know about that project?
No, we haven't.
Okay, so
but I do know, yeah.
You do know, okay.
Yeah, of course.
Because that to me, the ride sharing and the house sharing feel to me they're kind of similar sized problems, like, and both of them, that's like they've kind of solved the problem well, both Uber and Airbnb in a sense. There's obviously all the shortcomings, but it's a kind of known, like you say, you don't need all these like new breakthroughs that you need to solve. But I think like I don't know the project very closely, but I've had a few conversations with them, and my sense is that they like have really struggled with like not with I don't know anything about the market facing challenges that they've had to deal with, or the financing challenges, or anything like that. It's been the internal dynamics of the team of like because it is ideologically motivated. We've got this vision about how the world should be. The great thing about being a like traditional startup in the capitalist context is everyone knows what the job is. It's about maximizing profit as quickly as possible. And it sort of sets the priorities and there's no arguments. Whereas if your job is like, we're actually trying to change the world for the better, we're trying to bring some new values about, like it invites so much more debate and tension, and people, it's like, we're here to do something meaningful. We're not here just to make money. So it just makes me wonder what you would learn, like if that's part of your research, is like to talk to these groups that have attempted different things. And I would just be really curious to see where they're at, because I haven't talked to them in maybe 18 months or something. So I don't know where they're at all. But yeah, what's the strategy for alignment internally? Like, because it sounds like you're trying to do, I mean, realistically, it's like a meta startup, right? It's like this network of companies that each of them has to succeed and the whole has to succeed. And there needs to be like coherence across the whole stack. Like how do you keep that? Yeah, coherence.
Let me just stick because you also asked about worker cooperatives that I did not get to answer as well. I like worker cooperatives. They're a better version than a private-owned enterprise, but they're still owned by few people. You know, the interest of the work, like we're trying to build enterprises that actually serve public service, not service of the people that are delivering that service. So in a particular scale, the public is actually deciding to start provide a service for itself, and it's hiring people. Then because it's public, it's actually has many mechanisms to make sure that the worker is not being abused.
Right.
So there's, you know, by default, there's a labor and a collective bargaining internally. They decide on things that matter to them internally, but they don't decide on prices, and they don't decide on, this is not the way I see this, at least at the enterprise, at least at the Amazon level. But for example, if some workers are trying to start producing soap or a computer or whatever, that could still be a worker-owned cooperative, and that the bank that we're trying to do, it would still fund, because we don't want to fund only us internally producing, because that doesn't make sense. It takes, you know, it's too difficult to scale. So the bank itself has different layers of actually funding. So first goal is to actually fund things are consumer co-op, but then second layer is worker co-op. Third layer is, you know, social balance, all kinds of, you know, that needs to be developed further on. But so this is actually what I think on a consumer versus worker co-op. On Fairbnb, I don't think we can ever outcompete Airbnb and Uber, competing with them directly on silo type projects. But if you have Airbnb, and if you have Uber, and if you have some sort of bank like that is doing the exchange, you know, because like every time you pay an Uber, you know, a bank is making 2-3%, Visa, MasterCard. So imagine you actually have the bank as well, this neo type of bank, not the primitive style commercial banks. And this is how you outdo Uber, not just by creating new styles of. So I think that is by default one of the major problems that they in a market share type of problem. We have this fear of big enterprises. So with, you know, what I'm talking about, it sounds like there's this big enterprise that's kind of controlling the world. No, it doesn't have the, based on, if you see the governance model, it's completely global, like, and which kind of solves another problem that, let's say, Amazon in Uruguay could fail. Fuck it, what happens? Or it could be strange dynamics internally that just fails, but it doesn't matter. The rest is not, it's like a resilient type of organization. So I think you can solve this thing, even though it's working in a similar brand that's completely coherent. It doesn't necessarily have to be controlled by a few people type of, I think that's just fear-based kind of. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know. I think I didn't answer all the questions, but internally, the dynamics internally, this is probably more what you have to say than what we have to say, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not as like Migros doesn't have it. I think there's this almost activist community. There's this radicalism that's beyond comprehension, you know. Like I hear people within, you know, people that I share a lot of values with in Switzerland, they complain that Migros is not 100% sustainable in whatever they, you know, it's not real. Like, let's keep it's a progress thing, you know.
Yeah.
We cannot, it's I think it's delusional to kind of think that we're going to start with everything just perfect, because we're also learning as we're moving what harm we're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that's something that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm really comfortable with, is not being utopian, like not trying to imagine like, oh, we'll just do everything right and we'll do no harm, and then everyone will want to buy that product, right? Like that doesn't actually play out in practice. There's something else that struck me in this document. What is it? 32 pages long. Something that really sticks out is you did not use the word blockchain. And 32 pages of talking about new forms of organization and participative governance and decision-making. And that, in my books, increases your credibility a few notches. And I wanted to know what's behind that omission.
Please go, Diego, because I'm a bit ruthless on blockchain.
Oh, come on, you are more like blockchain tech.
I was in blockchain. I was in blockchain when it started. You know, and we come from the tech world that we, you know, it's a problem that needed to be solved a long time ago, and it's going to be, if it's going to be solved, it's going to be great, because it solves the data integrity issue. You know, why should, you know, it's much more efficient in many ways. A revolution? Not really. It's not. It's just a tech thing. It's like Wi-Fi protocol. You know, no one talks about Wi-Fi protocol because no one makes money through the Wi-Fi protocol, doing some calculation and creating this whole culture that, you know, everyone thinks is going to change the world. But I think what it did interesting is empowered people. There's so many people in this world today that think that blockchain is going to solve our social problems. And I don't think so. I don't think how we can do that. We still have social problems that we need to, democracy is a developing process. We cannot think that it's, even us, like, we're not claiming that this organization is going to be, people are going to participate immediately, because people are not participating. There's examples in Barcelona, there's example in Madrid, how they've created software for participatory democracy, and they did research why people did not use those very much. And it makes a lot of sense if it's from social science perspective. It's just, you don't, you know, these are capacities that need to develop, and we need to start developing those. So we need to develop those capacities. We cannot, it's not the technology that's missing from those capacities. But in the end, I do think there's a lot of well-intentioned people in this whole Web3.
Yeah, me too.
We need to just channel them towards the right solutions, and solutions are not, we don't have to wait for new technology to solve data integrity. Like, we have Wikipedia, we have our, like, my passport, my banks never get stolen. Like, it's not, you know, I have so much information that's centrally controlled, and it's absolutely no risk. I don't even think about it. It's But there's a lot of good stuff in it. There's a lot of, I mean, I love Holochain. I think Holochain might be one of those that might actually solve this problem, because blockchain, I think it's on software level, it's immature. It was a good beginning. It solved the problem technically, but in a very primitive architecture design, which I think Holochain might solve that, but it's just going to be a protocol somewhere. It's not going to be all this.
I have a Holoport sitting on my desk over there. So I'm also a believer, a hopeful believer. I think I feel a similar way about Web3 being like, at the moment, it seems like in most of the world, maybe not all the world, but most of the world, the people that are interested in solving coordination problems with technology, they're all in that space. And so therefore the space is interesting to me. Like, and I don't want to be completely dismissive and say it's all a scam or something like that. But like you say, there's not that much technology in there that's very interesting to me. But the fact that all these people are excited about different structures, different agreements, different governance, that's interesting. I think the other interesting thing about it is they really figured out how to attract capital, you know, and that's a very helpful. I mean, it's partly very helpful, but then it also comes with a whole bunch of challenges as well, because it's like every time the market crashes, it's like so much community building and so many projects suddenly they're like go from this very exciting and like expansive, and then they're like completely crushed and starving, and everyone's depressed, and 80% of people lost their jobs. And I'm glad that I've never had to attach my livelihood to the crypto market, put it that way.
It's so sad, because it's like initially people that knew about technology, people that had the means got in it. And then lately, more people from less privileged, less financially privileged areas are putting money into it, which is actually what's creating value for the initial people that jumped in. So for me, there's it kind of makes me, and there's another major problem with it. I like our currencies are publicly owned. Yeah, like every other system is hijacked, it's publicly owned. It's still publicly owned. It's still a central bank. It's a public owned thing. Independent in some places. There's a bit of a dynamic, it's a complex dynamic, but it's still public utility. It's not, everyone's starting to make their currencies. It's not in my, the way I understand the monetary system, that's not, I'm an MMT type of, I use MMT lens a lot to understand monetary policy, and it's,
yeah. So for now, at least in the governance aspect that we are trying to put forward, I mean, blockchain is not a big framework that we are working on. We are thinking more in a distributed type of decentralized system, but more in like a type of federation way, that is something that exists. And if we combine these federated type of models with like high tech and last informational technologies, I think we can create a good governance model without blockchain. Maybe later on, I mean, if there is some application with these blockchain technologies or wallet chain or wherever, we are open to it. But for now, we are thinking more on this type of traditional institutional decentralized governance. Yeah, and we are trying to keep with the tech and see what emerges also.
Yeah, I think I also appreciate not just that the blockchain is missing, but that generally it's you haven't gone deep on any particular technology and pinned your hopes like we just this is going to solve. It's very compelling storytelling. People love it when you say like we've got this technical solution to these social problems, but it's just not credible. So it doesn't make the document read in a more compelling way to me, that like it's not coming from a technology first perspective. Like it's more complex than that.
Yes, indeed. For example, now we are trying to work on with other people that are like very in this type of participative software, very interesting. So yeah, in that sense, we are trying to see technology a lot, but it's not the core of the project. And we are trying to see different projects and create different partnerships with different people that can help with this technology. But we are not making this type of some sort of core framework or perspective to work on. We are trying to do more this economics type of political perspective as a core. And philosophy, I think.
One example, there's this worker co-op, the drivers co-op in New York. It's a very interesting example. It grew very fast. It attention in all kinds of mainstream media, New York Times, Guardian, everywhere. One of the problems they had, and I think it's this ideological thing, they agreed to pay they sort of decided to pay everyone the same, and there was very capable people in there that they got very complex livelihood that $20,000, $30,000 was not good for them. It didn't make sense, and I think that's also one of the flaws that some of these that's when ideology becomes flaws. It becomes sort of inhibits the scale and the proper operation of an organization. So that's for us, like we use these ideologies to understand the reality, so this reflexive approach, but not to make ideological decisions in a way. So in this enterprise that we see, like the exec of the ride sharing thing will get paid as much as the exec. We're competing with Uber on that, and it's I like whoever is ideologically like, I will never get paid that much because that's my value. But if someone brings a value to the place, we're going to compete in the market. That's not, because it has to be actionable. It has to outcompete.
But I think like consumer co-ops, they do very well in this because, I mean, there is some differences in wages, for example. They are not very big. I mean, because in general, this you don't need that even, and you don't have this type of complex CEOs type of back payments and these crazy things that who knows how they work, and they are becoming very destructive. So I think we think that this consumer co-op type of model it's also that not creating like an equal payment for everybody, but still it has much more equalitarian system than like private enterprise. And also income distribution is a problem of the state that at least partially the state need to solve it, not like a cooperative, or a couple of cooperatives, So we are seeing that equality in general in a society should be achieved by the state, but also by like civil society enterprises. And the combination of these two things can create good feedbacks and a more equal society for sure.
Of course, this is the other difference between you and a lot of what I see in Web3 and blockchain people is like, you actually believe the state has a role to play in like that you're not supposed to do everything, like and not everything is going to go in your wallet, but that there are other spheres of influence that people are also participating in and you don't have to take responsibility and take care of everyone on everything. I think this is one of the real challenges of being driven by a particular set of values, like holding these values, is how do you hold values and not be stubborn and like kind of pig-headed, like this is my ideological commitment, so we can make no compromise. And then, okay, you've got your values, but you don't have a business. Like it didn't work. Like that seems to be a really common pitfall. I mean, it's pitfall in the things that I've been involved in for sure. Like that's one of the main hangups, like knowing which thing to let go of and which thing you really need to hold firm to. It's if you can figure that one out, I'll be really excited. Dudes, I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna cook dinner for my lovely wife. I don't want to keep her waiting too long. But this is really exciting. I'm really happy to hear about it.
Well, I mean, first of all, yes, thank you for the interview and for the insightful comments.
I hope I get to come and play in RatPark. It seems like just the place that I want to be. And there's been a few other messages from Costa Rica saying, come visit. So I think it will happen. It might be a little, like I said, we're doing this European road trip for a year. So I think I don't think we're going to be leaving Europe, but maybe more like 2 years might be right time for us to come and visit. And if we can do an event there, that would be amazing. Super amazing.
I think we're very in line in so many different things that we didn't even get to talk, because we're interested to share this project. And at the same time, I thank you very much for fantastic conversation. Appreciate it. Also, like we're also learning how to talk in the camera and how to express this super complex type of thinking. So I can actually feel myself a Russian and not being very structured in my elaborating, But I would love to keep talking and develop these things, and if anyone is interested on these type of thing, I know a lot of people. So, any feedback from you would be fantastic in many different ways.
Yeah, cool. I would suggest at least one of you jump into the Micro Solidarity Discord, because there will be some people in there that will be very interested in this kind of stuff, and that will have really good connections and things too.
Nice.
Right, it's great seeing you.
Great seeing you. Enjoy your dinner. Say hi to Natty, and hopefully see you soon.
Ciao, ciao. Hasta luego.
Bye, Diego.